When they go after the UN ambassador, apparently because they think she's an easy target, then they've got a problem with me.
That was President Obama yesterday, defending UN Ambassador Susan Rice for her response in the days following the terrorist attack in Benghazi, in what has now become one of the largest conflicts for his administration, at least on the terrorism front. The president's remarks yesterday raise new questions over the conflicting accounts from the White House about the deadly attack. Here's why. On September 11th, 4 Americans were killed. You know that now, in our consulate in Benghazi, including our ambassador. It was a terrorist attack. On the 16th of September, 5 days later, Ambassador Rice went on 5 Sunday shows, including Fox News Sunday, and suggested that the attack was linked to an internet video.
Best assessment we have today is that, in fact, this was not a pre-planned, premeditated attack. That what happened initially was that it was a spontaneous reaction to what had just transpired in Cairo as a consequence of the video.
When challenged yesterday on the story that Ms. Rice told several networks, the president said he, the White House, sent her out there with that explanation.
As I've said before, she made an appearance at the request of the White House in which she gave her best understanding of the intelligence that had been provided to her. If Senator McCain and Senator Graham and others go after somebody, they should go after me. And I'm happy to have that discussion with them. But for them to go after the UN ambassador, who had nothing to do with Benghazi, and was simply making a presentation based on intelligence that she had received, and to besmirch her reputation, is outrageous.
But if the president believed that their best intel, 5 days after the attack, suggested the video was to blame, then why did we see this moment in the presidential debates, the second one, where he claimed he was calling this terror from day one?
I think it's interesting the president just said something which is that on the day after the attack, he went to the Rose Garden and said that this was an act of terror. That's what I said. You said in the Rose Garden, the day after the attack, it was an act of terror. It was not a spontaneous demonstration. Is that what you're saying?
Please proceed, Governor.
I want to make sure we get that for the record, because it took the president 14 days before he called the attack in Benghazi an act of terror.
Get the transcript.
He did, in fact, sir. So let me call it an act of terror.
Can you say that a little louder, Candy?
Joining me now for a fair and balanced debate, Simon Rosenberg, president and founder of the New Democrat Network and a former Clinton campaign advisor. And Mark Thiessen, who's a fellow at the American Enterprise Institute, columnist for the Washington Post, and a former speechwriter for President George W. Bush. Guys, welcome back.
Sure. It's good to be here.
Thanks, Megan. How are you?
So it's interesting to see, the president come to Susan Rice's defense and say, don't go after her because she doesn't know anything about Benghazi. She had nothing to do with Benghazi. And that begs the question, Simon, why did you put her out on the Sunday talk shows to talk about Benghazi?
Well, Megan, we've had this conversation a few times before.
But not that particular one. Yeah. Not that particular point.
I think because the administration, because there were, at that moment, right, the video was still causing in other parts of the world, right, throughout the North Africa, the Middle East, there were riots and demonstrations going on throughout the region. The administration was attempting to explain to the American people what was going on. And as the president said yesterday, that Susan Rice gave it her best shot. The CIA has taken responsibility for producing that intelligence report, which was a week later amended, in essence, and where they said that that wasn't really exactly what happened. And what happened was that, it was a premeditated attack. But to be clear, Susan Rice also said in the video you showed that this was a military-style attack. There's never been confusion about that from the beginning. They never said this was a bunch of guys who climbed the fence and jumped over. They said it looked like it came out of a spontaneous demonstration. And remember, the guy who conducted the attack himself gave an interview and said he was able to round up the guys to conduct the attack because of the anger of the video. And so I just think this is making a whole lot about nothing.
Okay.
We know.
Okay. Let's not retread all the old ground. But I want to get to this. this.
Yeah.
What Simon said there was right about the guy. There was some question about the video in the early days. Some people on the scene in Libya were saying it had to do with the video, Mark. But the White House didn't say we're getting conflicting information. We're hearing on the one hand that it may be terror, but on the other hand that it may just be spontaneous protest linked to a video. They came out and said, look, our best assessment is that it's about a video, and there's no evidence. No evidence was the term they used that this was pre-planned. Mark.
No, that's exactly right. And look, I worked in the White House. Anytime you're drafting these kinds of statements, you always know that the first reports in the field are almost invariably wrong. And so what you do is you say, look, we're getting conflicting information. There have been reports that there was a protest. There are other reports there was a terrorist attack. We simply don't know yet. And she would have been fine if she had said that. But that's not what she said, as you exactly pointed out. She said the best information we had was that this was sparked by a video. And she said this 5 days after the attack, when, in fact, within 24 hours attack, the CIA station chief had reported back to Washington that there was no protest, and, in fact, this was a terrorist attack. This was several days after the American eyewitnesses had been evacuated and brought to Langstuhl Air Force Base, where they were debriefed and said the same thing. So now it's possible she didn't know any of that, but then why was she the one that President Obama chose to go out on the air? Where was Secretary Clinton? Where was General Petraeus? Where was Director Clapper? Where was Secretary Panetta? Why was someone out of the loop the one briefing the American people on what happened in Benghazi?
Simon, did you find it odd that the president was saying, take on me, when he hasn't had a press conference in 8 months, and the press corps would clearly love to take him on instead of Susan Rice?
I think he was saying that he wanted John McCain and Lindsey Graham to take him on, not the press corps. But
same is true for them. All right, wait, let me pick up with you. We'll pick up on that point and others right after this break. Sorry, because we wanted to get a little bit more time with you, so we squeezed in a little time.
Sure.